Remember when Richie said he would refrain from dating until he fixed his "I can't keep it in my pants" problem? Yeah, no one believed that, and rightly so. 2 years ago, Jacqueline Glenn released a video heartbroken and dismayed. I've decided to show a picture of her being in a relationship that she truly is happy and deserves to be in, rather than the video she uploaded, because this is Jacqueline how she should be, and not how social Repose made her feel. She announced that her public relationship with fellow YouTuber Richie, who, as I said before, goes by the alias Social Repose, had ended due to his near-constant infidelity. In a response week non-apology video, he stated that he felt like he had an addiction to the funky adult dance, and that he would be independently working on this without the aid of therapy. This is something he should have looked into because his efforts thus far have been no less than complete and total failure. 2 years after this initial incident, Richie met a girl called Roy online, who, by the way, is the most adorable human being I've ever had the pleasure of laying my eyes upon. Hey girl. Hey. Given the amount of time that had passed since his public breakup with Jacqueline, she decided to give him a chance. Richie, however, was not able to control his damn self. He somehow managed to cross every boundary set in this relationship by continuing communication and intimacy with one specific girl Roy explicitly asked him to keep at a distance. He would often lie to the other girls about his relationship status and the nature of his relationship with Roy. For a time they had an open relationship, and he would state this to the other girls even when the relationship was agreed to become a closed one. This case indicates a glaring issue in how relationship statuses of an open nature can be used by Richie and people like him to cheat. Relationships of a non-monogamous nature tend to have two separate categories: open relationships and polygamous relationships. Open relationships are an agreement between the people that intimacy is not reserved just for the two involved in the relationship, and they are free to be intimate and romantic with other people outside of the relationship. Polygamous relationships are similar in a sense, however, a third, fourth, fifth, etc. person may be added into the existing relationship. An example of a commonly practiced open relationship is where person A and B allow each person, A and B, to go out and be intimate and romantic with other people. An example of a polygamous relationship is where person A and B introduce a third person, C. C can date both A and B, or in some circumstances, C may only date A or only date B. It's fairly obvious that in a polygamous relationship, when introducing other people, you need to have certain set boundaries and communication. This is how polygamous relationships work. With open relationships, it can be slightly more tricky if you don't have one specific third, fourth, etc. person being introduced on a regular basis. Roy admits that in the beginning of their open relationship, the boundaries and rules weren't particularly clear, but she does clarify that later they did talk about the boundaries and rules and agreed on them together, in which Richie would then go on and break all of those boundaries and rules after the fact. It is possible to cheat in both open and polygamous relationships. There are certain boundaries and rules that are set in place to keep both parties happy. Maybe there are ways in which extracurricular intimacy, as one may call it, has to go about. For example, person A may have to ask person B before they are intimate or romantic with someone else, or they may have to disclose it after the fact. There are certain things that maybe in certain relationships people aren't comfortable with. For example, again, person A may not want person B to kiss other people or go all the way with other people, but they are okay with other things. There may be certain people A doesn't want B to be intimate or romantic with. Overall, it's super important to make sure you make your boundaries clear, what you are happy with, whether they should ask permission first or disclose it afterwards, and if there are certain people you don't want your partner to be intimate with. As well as this, there is the super important subject of protection when it comes to intimacy, and this is true for all and any type of relationship. While I won't dictate what people should and shouldn't do with their own bodies within their own intimate lives, if you are having relationships outside of your core relationship, even if you are abiding by the agreed boundaries and comfort zones of the other person, I urge you to use protection, and this should be one of the boundaries for every single open or polygamous relationship. It should be heavily encouraged to use protection. According to Roy, this is one of the boundaries they did in fact agree on that Richie again decided to just completely ignore. Not only is it possible to cheat in relationships of a polygamous and open nature, it can be highly dangerous if you are having unprotected intimacy outside of the relationship. You could pick up something from someone who is not in the core relationship and then bring it back to the original person. If you are male, you could impregnate somebody, and if they do not wish to go through with terminating the pregnancy, you've just put yourself in a whole situation your core partner didn't agree to be in. This is why, in my opinion, Richie is one of the most despicable YouTubers out there. Not only does he go against his own partner's wishes, comfort zones, and boundaries, he's putting them in danger. Not only does he use his power in order to exploit his audience for his own needs and gain, he puts them in danger. He causes so much mistrust and heartbreak and insecurity in all of his partners. He uses women for his own gain and treats them nothing more than a toy. And then he has unprotected intimacy with various people that could contract a serious life-threatening illness, and just spreads it about because of his refusal to use protection and abide by the boundaries set. It's reckless behaviour, and it surprises me how he could sit there for months and criticise Onision for his damaging behaviour when he's doing something just as bad. He's causing emotional, mental, and potentially physical anguish to his partners and the girls he's not even partnered with. Using the statements made by Roy, I'm making the assumption that Richie doesn't make it a priority to carry protection with him. So, if that is true, and your quickie in the bathroom that Jacqueline spoke of, what if the girl you had that quickie with had chlamydia, and then you went back and you were intimate with Jacqueline? Or what if she had something worse? What if she had HIV, Richie? What if you needed more of that booty and it ended up you contracting a life-threatening STD? Because obviously you're malicious and you're vindictive and deceptive, you don't disclose that potential risk to your partners, which we know you don't disclose because you were cheating and therefore couldn't disclose it to them. What if that girl in the bathroom ended up getting pregnant and didn't fancy terminating the pregnancy, Richie? Where do you think you would be right now? In your weak non-apology video to Jacqueline, you did own up to being a dick and causing a lot of emotional and mental anguish for her, but you didn't acknowledge the fact that you could have been potentially infecting her with a lot of dangerous illnesses. And let's say that you were in fact using protection every single time. You do know that condoms are only 97 to 98% effective, because they can tear, they can fall off, things can happen with them. Every single time you are intimate with a person, there is always a risk of infection and pregnancy. And it's an unnecessary risk, especially when you are already committed to somebody else. I'm obviously not saying that people who have multiple partners who are single or in an open or polygamous relationship are automatically somehow diseased. However, if you are in that open relationship or that polygamous relationship, your partner should be made aware that there is in fact a risk of infection or pregnancy. And the luxury of this knowledge was not given to Richie's partners. They were not allowed to have the opportunity or the chance or the informed consent in order to sleep with someone who had been sleeping around with other people, potentially mostly without protection. And this is why Richie is in fact addicted to being a dick. If you actually have a problem, Richie, if you genuinely have an addiction, seek therapy, because your claims that you don't think it works for you, really at this point, you need to try harder, because trying to work on it independently yourself, if you truly meant that, it's not working. If you genuinely have been independently trying to curb this addiction, it's not working. Either that or you just haven't bothered to try. Either way, you need to seek professional help because you are causing mental, emotional, and possible physical problems for people. It isn't just a case of, oh well, I've damaged my girlfriend, she's heartbroken, she's got no trust, and she's going to have to deal with these insecurities for the rest of her life. It could be an infection they have to deal with for the rest of their lives. I suggest that if you want to have people stop calling you out in a future potential case where they're going to be forwarding their medical bills to you, get help.